Welcome to Business Innovators Radio, featuring industry influencers and trendsetters sharing proven strategies to help you build a better life right now.
Welcome to the show, everybody. Today is a military veteran spotlight show, and I'm glad to have Regan Edens with us today. Regan is the general manager of Hoplite Industries, a cyber risk solutions company that helps defend large companies against advanced cyber threats using their patented technologies and full-spectrum cybersecurity services. Regan is an Army veteran and a Bronze Star awardee. Regan also spent time as a Department of the Army civilian, where he was given the Civilian Superior Service Award, which is the second highest award in the Department of Defense that can be given to a government civilian. And Regan has been on more than half a dozen excursions to Afghanistan and Iraq since 2002. Welcome, Regan.
Thanks, Jack. It's a pleasure and an honor. Thank you to your listeners for tuning in.
So, tell me, first of all, just tell me a little bit about Hoplite Industries. After your time in the service and getting out, how did you come to work there?
Well, I spent the last 10 years in government service really trailblazing in technology-focused areas. You name it. Intelligence, surveillance, reconnaissance technologies, ground penetrating technologies, even cyber security technologies, tagging, tracking, locating. So I've really touched lots of phenomenologies and across a broad spectrum of applications. Mostly it's been on the very hardest mission sets. So when I met Anthony Kokenauer, who's the president, and he and I, although we have very different backgrounds, share that common core mission-focused DNA, which is really the dedication to the hardest mission set, and really the application of new technologies to those mission sets to get things done that are otherwise significantly lacking. So about 2.5 years ago, we started this journey, and during the technology development process, and as startups go through fundraising and making the decision on bootstrapping, we've really walked down a wild adventure on that portion of my career that I hadn't been familiar with from government service. So you say about the president of the company having a big difference. Does he have any military background at all, or are you or anyone else in the company have military background, or are you the only prior service person? So I'm the only prior service person, but what's interesting about that is that I think that common core of excellence, the background that you and I have, we've been very honored to serve with the very best at what they do. And I think that during my entire career, I've always really honed in on those particular types of persons with very, very skilled expertise. And with Hoplite, Anthony Kokenauer is one of those individuals. He has a magnificent skill set, and that really focus to the mission is really what attracted us to each other, because he sees the significant risk that the U.S. economy endures with cybersecurity, and decided to do something about it. And that was really something that stood out for me when we first made the introduction together. So it sounds like Anthony shares the same dedication to service to others, really, as we do coming from the military. Absolutely, and I think that the key to the sort of success as I define it is that valuable contribution that you really give to the community, to the country that you live in, that really goes beyond your own self-interest. And I think that it has been a labor of love, because this is a very, very difficult problem set. It's very complex, and technology is only one portion of the solution, but contributing extreme value in the sections in the technology areas that are weakest is really where Hoplite shines, and really where Anthony, in his technical skill set, really does and can make a difference in industry and in our nation's economy. So obviously although we would like to, we can't help everybody. Do you have a certain ideal customer that you're looking for, or client, I guess would be a better word, that you're looking to try to help?
Sure. So for Hoplite and the technology and really expertise that we offer, it's really best suited for the 1%. So that is the hardest to defend, that is the highest risk for breach, and that is the lowest risk tolerance for breach. Now, examples of that in different verticals would be finance, would be healthcare, obviously, because people's lives are at risk, would be an very specific high-tech industry that has intellectual property and processes that are very, very important for them to protect and defend. It also government as well, because they serve the people's interests within Department of Defense and within other federal spaces that are absolutely imperative to protect personally identifiable information of both people in service to the country, but also people whose processes and records are being processed by government. So that 1%, that is the hardest to defend. That is truly where that's the best resource, that's the best equipped. That is where Hoplite excels. You would think, given those sort of descriptors, that those networks would already be capable of defending themselves or be capable of securing themselves. And the reality is that's simply not true. That there are significant, persistent vulnerabilities on even the highest and best resource companies that make those companies vulnerable. And that's, again, where Hoplite excels at its very best.
So just to go to that point when you said, because companies are spending lots and lots of money. I mean, some of the Fortune 100 companies are spending in probably tens of millions on security each and every year. What types of things, and I'm sure they think that they're doing everything that they can, what types of things does Hoplite Security offer that can make them less vulnerable?
Sure. So that's a really great question. That is the $100 million question, right? Ultimately, no matter how much companies spend, so we have one of our Fortune 100 customers. That customer spends $90 million between people and technologies, okay, in order to defend themselves. And when we had the opportunity to engage them, there were significant issues on their network, very, very significant issues. So when Hoplite, the reason why is a combination of things. So it's a combination of the integration problems that each of these security technologies have. It's a combination of people, because we've got great people doing a very difficult, very highly specialized job, and it's an art and a science. And that technical expertise is very, very difficult to secure even for a large company. So, it's hard to find those people. It's hard to keep them on board. And even those people and their expertise are stretched because they have to be experts in every single technology and the integration between those technologies, and then understanding where the gaps in those technologies are that allow malicious and advanced cyber threats to penetrate their network. The last piece on really why it continues to be so persistent is that the larger the network, the more complex the network, the more difficult it is to do the uniform fixes and adherence of security policy across the network, the configurations, all the intricacies that really make a network secure. So the more complex, the more places that the company is located, the more data centers that they're involved in, exacerbates the problem in the issues with people and expertise and the issues between the gaps in the integration vulnerabilities amongst the security appliances and on the devices on the network. So what active network defense and what Argos do, which are the two key technologies that Hoplite offers along with their services, is they fill those gaps. Now that's an easy way to say it, but what active network defense really doesn't replace anything. What active network defense does, it applies uniform policy across the entire network so that security analysts can go to one place to apply a uniform policy change, which is distributed throughout their entire network security stack, and also vertically from the network security stack all the way down to the commodity devices like routers and switches. These things, oftentimes the security policy isn't uniform, and this lack of uniformity across not only just one data center, but let's say 6 or 10 data centers or 25 manufacturing or distribution plants. Now you can see that we begin to magnify the vulnerabilities. So that's one key thing is the security policy uniformity across the entire network. The second piece is behavior analytics. So Hoplite has patents pending on advanced behavior analytics that are very, very unique and able to monitor the heuristics and sort of the happiness of the network, if you will. And that network sentiment is what we call it, can really have some key indicators on what's happening with the network as the network is behaving anomalies are taking place on the network. The sentiment analysis that we have when our behavior analytics can really hone in and find the malicious events and the activities that are going on the network through monitoring those behavior analytics. The third piece is threat intelligence. Now, threat intelligence on an already very stretched network security team isn't very valuable because the network security threat intelligence is only valuable if you can actionize it, if you can weaponize it. And so what active network defense does is it consumes 52 different sources of threat intelligence, and it creates its own threat intelligence, and then distributes that threat intelligence across all of your security devices on your security stack, and then vertically all the way down to your commodity devices. And what that allows the network to do is it takes the human out of the loop as both the important decision maker is always there as a network security analyst is always present. But what it does is it takes the human out of the loop so they're not the constraint for distributing that network threat intelligence across the entire network and identifying threats and then acting on them. Does that make sense?
No, it absolutely does. So what I took from this is this isn't just, the latest and greatest set of security appliances that now people that just spent money on the latest, greatest security appliances have to trash all those routers or trash all those firewalls or different technologies whenever Hoplite comes. And this is something that actually works with those.
Right, and by doing that, you would think, well, okay, that must be a sort of a moderate improvement on the security technology's function. But what in reality is that these gaps, these integration gaps and these policy gaps, and the behavior analytics that are missed by even very, very skilled and experienced network security analysts. When you combine these three things together, you have a 40% or better improvement on a best-in-class technology suite across the entire security stack. So I'm talking about Palo Alto firewalls, IBM Q Radar, Checkpoint, FireEye. All of the names that you'd know in existing best-in-class security stack can have a 40% or better improvement. And what that means in terms of raw numbers, in one study, we had 4.9 million malicious events over 180 days. Their best-in-class security technologies missed 1.6 million of those malicious events. So that's an extraordinary level of performance that quite literally the Mongol horde is pouring through the gaps in these defenses. So for us, when we developed active network defense, what we wanted to do is not to be a better FireEye or to be a better SIM or to be or to outproduce or outperform Checkpoint or a Palo Alto firewall, what we saw were the truly blatant gaps in the security of these devices. And that's where Hoplite really performs at an extraordinary level, is monitoring these gaps. Because what the humans do, when network security analysts are monitoring these, in these gaps in these technologies, this is sort of the ends of the spectrum in their capabilities. And what ends up happening is the security analysts can't really make sense of the noise between these technologies because that's not where the technologies function best. So what ends up happening is it just as a day-to-day function because that security analyst has got like 12 different things he's got to do, right? And he's got to keep the keep the network functional. He's got to do, all of the roles and responsibilities that he or she performs, and maybe even dual hat it. Maybe they're the network security team and a sysadmin, or triple hat it for that matter. What ends up happening is in these gaps, in these sort of very noisy areas that the current best-in-class technologies don't perform well, as active network defense excels in these areas. So when we identify threats, which is where truly the threats are coming through, are these gaps, active network defense excels in these areas. And when an analyst gets a notification that the event, malicious event is taking place, or anomalous activity or behavior on the network is transpiring, they can be certain that it's not a false positive, that they're not wasting their time, and they can really hone down on what the event was, where is it taking place, what's the contextual data that really alert is only good as the data that it tells you, which validates the alert, and then that builds confidence in the security team that says, okay, if an active network defense ever sees this malicious activity or this anomalous event, I'm going to automatically block that. And so then they can tune up the automatic blocking, and then that way the analyst is confident that active network defense can take care of these things without distracting the analyst because it performs in a confident way.
One of the other things I found interesting, because you had sent some of the information about the products over to me to take a look at before the interview, was at one point in time, or in the reading, I saw something about when CIOs or CTOs find out that they can actually turn their routers into weapons, it makes them smile. Could you explain that to me?
Yeah. So here's the ugly truth. The ugly truth is that the security industry is failing, right? Now, our success, we don't want to see anybody fail. But the failing part is that the industry makes a promise that it really doesn't keep. The promise is made through marketing, which is if you buy the next generation of a piece of equipment, then you'll be secure. Oh, and if you buy the next generation piece of equipment, then you'll be secure. Or if you buy this piece of equipment with the next generation piece of equipment, then you'll be secure. And the reality is that that's not true. In the security industry, their customers know that this isn't true. And the reason for that is because cyber risk insurance is in about an equal amount is spent, about $3 billion a year in the U.S. is spent on insurance. And roughly the same proportional amount is spent on security technologies. So what we have to do is we have to stop the false promises, and what we have to do is bring results. So the way to bring results is not to tell a CIO or a CTO, here's what, you're going to add us, you're going to spend, $1 million or less than $1 million adding us to your network. We're going to make a bunch of promises that we don't keep. And oh, by the way, you're going to have to place all your infrastructure in 18 months, your routers and your switches, as much as you can afford, and then you'll be secure. And reality is that that's not true. What active network defense does, one of the things that it does very best is that it weaponizes the entire network. So it turns, literally, as it distributes threat intelligence across the network, it turns a router and a switch into a weapon against the attacker. So as an attacker or a malicious event or a malicious activity is trying to move laterally in the network, active network defense recognizes these things, makes the proper alerts if it is so armed, will automatically do the blocking. Will do the blocking throughout the network using routers and switch protocols which already exist. So these devices, if used properly, if made smart by a technology like active network defense, now you weaponize the entire network to be able to defend itself. Because there is no reason to have to replace these devices. What you have to do is you have to have a middle layer that makes these devices smart and makes these devices effective to defend against attackers.
And when you brought up and talked about it makes it, you're defending now, you mentioned and also in your literature some about, defense in depth. And I think you made mention that even if somehow there would be some type of a breach that would occur, that your services also allow you to find out if some of those credentials are out there in the dark net or out available for sale. That's one of the other things that you offer.
Yeah. So there is a bitter irony that exists within cybersecurity, which is everyone recognizes that there is no silver bullet for sure. That defense in depth, which for some of your audience members that may know or may not know, that concept was borrowed from the U.S. military doctrine. And what it means is, it means that the first layer of security does what it's supposed to do. But it's backed up by a complementary second layer of security, which is backed up by a complementary third layer of security. And then the devices on the network itself reinforce security. Now, every network security company will tell you that the weakest chain of humans, right? Because we have people who have various degrees of expertise and knowledge, and they're clicking on emails, and they're sending emails, and they're just really doing their job. And social engineering is very complex and very difficult to defend against, because even very smart people fall to social engineering attacks from hackers. But what ends up happening in the defense in depth concept, each of these things are meant to reinforce each other. But the reality is that right now they're only reinforcing each other really on paper. These enormous gaps that I mentioned too, and some of these technologies complement each other, but many of these technologies only complement each other on paper. And then the reality is that a very narrow gap on paper becomes an extraordinary gap for attackers or multiple attackers or armies of attackers to pass through on a network. So what active network defense, we're no silver bullet. We are hardening some fantastic technologies out there that do what they do in an extraordinary way. And by complementing them truly, then we hope to fill in those gaps in reality, to fill those gaps in a performance capability and a results-oriented capability. And so that now the customer has a true defense in depth, which means if you have a FireEye appliance, and then you have a Palo Alto firewall, and you have Checkpoint on your solutions, and you have a best-in-class IBM Radar SIEM, these gaps are now filled by this overarching unification of behavior analytics, threat intelligence, and security policy that active network defense offers. But even so, we will recognize the fact that although a CIO or a CISO or CTO does not have to resign themselves to living their life in sort of the metaphor of walking through a dangerous situation and not knowing whether or not that their data is going to be breached. They can live in a sustainable and defendable network environment that can take care of the vast majority of attackers. So let's assume, though, as all networks are vulnerable, that an attack does take place and the security is breached. How does the network know from looking from the inside of the network to the outside of the network whether or not that they've been breached? Because if I'm only viewing my network, if I'm in my castle, that's the famous metaphor, if I'm in my castle as a security analyst and I'm peering through these small windows, looking at the threat landscape which surrounds my castle, how do I know that I've been breached? Especially when we have these vulnerabilities that I'm not aware of, and an attacker may or may not be inside my castle walls. Or, worse yet, the attacker has already left and taken the keys to the kingdom out with them through one of the gaps in the walls that I'm not aware of. So what active network defense does is it's complemented by a technology called Argos. Argos does is it looks at the threat landscape and from the large global enterprise from the attacker's point of view. So what it does is it assesses very technically the threat landscape, walking around the castle, walking through the entire kingdom, if you think about a large global enterprise, right? And then listing what are the vulnerabilities, the obvious things. You would think that they would be caught, and very oftentimes that they're not. It's not a pen test, because oftentimes, I hate to say it, even for best-in-class networks, oftentimes a pen test is not needed whatsoever in order to breach a network. There are existing vulnerabilities that are unknown to the security analyst that allow an attacker to exploit them. So as Argos assesses the outside of the kingdom and the outside of each of the castles in the kingdom, and looking at their attack surface and looking and listing the vulnerabilities, it also turns around and goes out to the open web, to the deep web, and to the dark web, and it looks for indicators of compromise. For a very large defense contractor that's it's in the top 25. I won't be any more specific than that. We had a very difficult time convincing them that we would add any value. I mean, truly, they are some of the very best in the entire defense industry. And they said that the challenge was, tell us something that we don't know. And so we sent Argos out, and within a very short period, Argos came back with a username and password of one of their key board members who knows better. And that's something that should not be out in the wild. That opened up the door for the conversation, which is Argos and Active Network Defense combined offers something very, very unique and very, very added value capabilities-wise to even a best-in-class global enterprise. So as Argos looks for indicators of compromise, are there IP out in the deep web? Is it being sold and you just don't know it? Are there username and passwords that have been captured and dumped? Are there areas within the deep and dark web that attackers are discussing whether or not your company has come up on the radar for a phishing attack or some other sort of attack, right? This intelligence is gathered. Is your enterprise sending out emails with malware attached to it? Is there malware inside your enterprise right now pinging out, right? And what about historically, right? So are there indicators in the past? We have advanced persistent threats that do things, that go to sleep, and then they do things and they go to sleep. The intent of that is to avoid best-in-class security technologies. So Argos can pick up this threat intelligence that's happening on your network longitudinally over time, and to be able to help you build a picture of what could be happening on your network. It may be a historical event, but what happens if that historical event is over? It happens 3 times over the last 90 days or 3 times over the last 3 years, right? And oh, by the way, that's your mail server. Or oh, by the way, that's one other key server that should not be vulnerable or should not be accessible by an attacker, right? These things can help you can help a CIO or CISO understand what's happening outside their realm that's giving them clear indications that something bad is happening. So Argos can do this historically, but what's really a complement to active network defense is that Argos can monitor these descriptors actively in real time. So if you have your C-suite or your C-suite plus your finance people or your C-suite plus your finance people plus your network security team, right? If their username and password all of a sudden begins to leak out, or keywords on projects that are very sensitive to the company, are very important to the ongoing operation, end up in the wild, Argos will be able to detect this and be able to notify the CISO and the CEO or CTO in real time. And one instance of this is that we were able to detect the hijacking of a subnet at Fort Huachuca, and were able to notify the DoD CERT before the DoD CERT knew that the subnet had been hijacked. So these are extraordinary capabilities that we want to bring to bear. We have been bringing to bear over the past several years within the intelligence community space and the defense space, but we want to bring these extraordinary capabilities to bear within the industry because, quite frankly, the American economy and the industry has the very most to lose.
That sounds like an incredible system, and it's starting. I mean, I know that you're working hard to make more people aware, and also to educate the security officers in these companies and the C-suite executives in these companies on how this product actually helps with the total situational awareness. But as you're trying to do that, what are the main reasons? I mean, it seems like this would be a pretty easy sell. What do you think is the main reason right now that the people that you can help the most decide not to buy from you right now? Is it price, time commitment? What do you think?
So that's a really great question. And with great irony, I tell you the answer, which is the first thing is they don't believe. And partly because of that, I mean, every day we publish a daily news, and that daily news is literally filled with attacks, breaches, malicious events, both on the strategic level and on the tactical level and on the industry level, right? We can literally fill up a drudge over and over in a drudge report over and over and over again of all of these events that take place daily and weekly. So there is a sense of fatigue out there, and I am empathetic to that. I really do. It reminds me of the first time that I visited Iraq in 2005, right? The world's largest army is scared and hiding. And the reason is because people were dying in droves on Route Irish, being blown up every single day. And that the fear was, we can't protect ourselves. We can't defend against this threat. And what we find is that the discussion succeeds when we have leaders inside the organization that say to them, someone must be able to help us. And if we already have best in class, then who am I going to turn to that will help us really create a sustainable and defendable network, right? And so that's the opportunity that Hoplite has to really begin the conversation, which is the CISO, the CTO, the CEO, even the board refuses to accept the state of persistent vulnerability. So there are technologies out there. Another technology is called Blue Vector, which is another extraordinary best-in-class technology. And they do something no one else can do. So when we combine these technology offerings in the spaces for which we have some extraordinary security technologies out there, but they're just not good in these areas. And that's okay. That's okay. What we can do is we can complement these technologies and complement their weaknesses and be able to reinforce them. So for us, it's overcoming disbelief and overcoming fatigue, right? It's being able to explain to them why it is that I spend $90 million a year and I'm still so egregiously vulnerable. Why is that? Why is it that my CEO cannot send an email in true name because my network is owned by multiple adversaries, right? And they're impersonating my CEO and my CFO, sending emails out on our enterprise. Why is that happening if I spend $40 million a year on our security solutions between people and technologies? Why is that? So Hoplite begins the conversation with trust and confidence, which is we have to overcome this disbelief, which is the right thing to do. It's the right thing for them to be wary because promise after promise has been broken to them. But once we begin the opportunity to demonstrate the capabilities, and once we begin to really educate the customer, no matter whatever their technical expertise is, we begin to educate them on the security shortfalls within their existing enterprise. Then they begin to understand why active network defense not just complements their incurred investment, but actually makes it perform in an extraordinarily better way. And then when we finally get to the point where the CIO hears, you don't have to replace your routers next generation. You don't have to do that. And the reason for that is because with our system, your routers will be weaponized. They will perform at an extraordinary level because that's what active network defense does. So when you get these infrastructure gains where now the CIO was faced with, okay, do I add another security analyst, which is very expensive, very hard to find, or do I replace these sets of routers in this manufacturing facility, right, which are several years old, but I think I have to replace them in order to be more secure. Now we can say to them, look, allow active network defense to be on the network and do what it does best, and don't replace those routers, and maybe invest in another security analyst, or maybe reallocate those dollars to older servers or something else within the infrastructure that you need to boost. So we've never had a conversation that somebody said, oh, well, I just don't think that you can help us. That never happened. The conversation initially goes to disbelief, it goes to fatigue, and then it goes to fear. And the fear is that what if what you're saying is true? What if the fact that my best-in-class technologies, or the technologies I can afford, right, are not performing nearly as good as I think that they are, and we're not as secure as I think that we should be? Now active network defense comes on and says that you got 500, 600, 1,000. In one case, in one egregious case, there were 10,000 compromised endpoints, right? So and the security team or the network team becomes overwhelmed. On the services side, that's where active network defense or Hoplite as a company really excels, because we're not really interested in selling you technology. What we're interested in is providing an outcome, and because the outcome is what the customer wants. I want a sustainable, defendable, hardened network. That's what I want, and that's what I think I'm paying for. So what active network defense and Argos are complemented by is the expertise, the no-kidding expertise that can help the customer say, okay, this is the state of your security. This is what active network defense says that we're missing right now, and we're going to help you develop a risk mitigation roadmap on your network that gives you a clear campaign path so that the outcome is a sustainable, defendable network, and so that you're not paying us forever to be here to tell you what to do. So we can help you develop that path. We can guide you. We can even support you. But at the end of the day, you do what you do best, which is serve your customers and make a profit and keep your data secure. And so that's really our goal, and that's what really for us as a technology-focused company, because every single security analyst will tell you that technology will not solve the problem. It's a combination of people, processes, organizations, and technologies. And oh, by the way, it's a very, very agile, very, very incentivized threat, because right now there's almost no downside risk to legions of organized crime and attackers.
I appreciate you going into depth with all that. So at the end of the day, what I really hear, if I drill it down to what I would take away if I was a CIO, is that really because of the level of, for lack of a better word, and actually it's probably the best word, situational awareness that you provide by your services and your technologies, being able to look across the network, inside the network, outside the network, that you would basically be like the best friend to the CIO because of that situational awareness. Is that a good way to put that?
Yeah, exactly, Jack. One of the things that active network defense does very well, and Argos does very well, is baseline the risk and for the CIO, for the CISO or the CTO. And what I mean by that is that if you have a brand new CTO or you're a brand new CISO or CIO, and I would assume from my Intel background that you're walking into a dirty environment, that you have to assume that your network has already been compromised. The question is how is it being compromised, or how has it been compromised, and what has been compromised? So those three questions are the key questions for a CTO or CISO or CIO developing what is the plan to harden my network, what are the resources that I need, what are the skills that I need to join my team, because I need to understand what I'm really walking into. Because at the end of the day, no one wants to be a former CISO. No one wants to be a former CIO, which means that your company was breached. It ended up on the Financial Times, right? And you're out of a job. Where do you go to work after that? So the reality is that with extraordinary risk, you need a technology which aids you in baselining that risk, which aids you in having situational awareness, because if there is a breach, wouldn't it be the very best person to come from would be the CIO instead of the Wall Street Journal, right? These are not the things that you want to notify your board on, right? You want the board to be best informed, and that best informed person, the conduit for best information, needs to be the CIO or the CTO or the CISO. What Active Network Defense and what Argos does, it aids them in doing that. One of the extraordinary things is that Anthony's forensics background made it imperative for him that a part of Active Network Defense's suite, if you will, of capabilities is that it captures all of the malicious activity, all contextually with forensic quality data. So you don't have to spend somebody like they're great companies like a Deloitte or PwC, $500 an hour, and in order to give you a report on what happened to your network. You don't have to do that. And the reason why is because Active Network Defense captures that at the forensic level, and you can and if an event does take place, the analysts become aware of it. They can do that. They can do that analysis or provide that data to an outsourced expert so that they can do a full analysis, so that you can return back to a state of security and harden the vulnerabilities. So for Active Network Defense and Argos, this combined offering is sort of a systems-to-systems approach, which is how we tackled one of the very most difficult problems, which is Iraq, which I mentioned, which was an extraordinary vulnerability in 2005, completely turned around because we attacked the problem in a different way. And that systems-to-systems approach, which worked and reduced deaths and gave soldiers on the ground confidence that they could perform their mission, that they weren't living in a perpetual state of vulnerability, we can do that within a network in a network environment.
Outstanding. I really appreciate you coming on with me today, Regan. If there's any last words you want to leave with everybody before we call it the day here for the interview?
Well, yeah. Just the last parting thought is you should believe nothing of what I say. Absolutely nothing. Hoplite is built on one simple principle, and that only results matter. That's it. That's it. This isn't marketing. This isn't empty promises. It's only results that matter. And if whatever technologies that you choose cannot produce the results for which their brand is built on, then you know where you stand. For Hoplite Industries and for the technologies that we have, it is only our success has only been based through results. We don't have a $5 million marketing campaign to tell people a bunch of lies that are not true. What we have the extraordinary results that have organically driven our growth inside of our company. And we are fully confident that we are not the silver bullet, but we have an extraordinary capability, which is that will add an extraordinary level of improved performance on your network. And we're absolutely confident that we can deliver that.
Okay, great. So if people want to get hold of you, what's the best way to get hold of you?
Well, you can go to hopliteindustries.io, which is our website. We don't have a lot of detail on the website for good reasons. Being painting a target on your back can be vicious at times, and even for network cybersecurity. So we have the basic information there on our network. You can reach out to me directly at redens, E-D-E-N-S, at hopliteindustries.com. And we'll field your questions. We can go as deep as you need to go into the rabbit hole in order to demonstrate credibility that our technology does what it says it can do and performs at a level that we say it can. So we have the expertise. There are no smoke and mirrors, and we gladly entertain the most complex and most difficult of scenarios, because that's what we do best. We perform in network environments that other technologies have fallen short. So thank you. I appreciate your time, Jack, and I appreciate your listeners' attention. Excuse me. And if we can help you, we would love to help you, because that's what we do best.
Okay, sounds great. You have a great rest of the week, Regan, and I'll talk to you later.
All right. Thank you very much, Jack. Have a great day. Bye-bye.
Thanks for listening to Business Innovators Radio. To hear all episodes featuring leading industry influencers and trendsetters, visit us online at businessinnovatorsradio.com today.